morning, everyone. My name is Dawn Patrick. I lead the Technology and Life Sciences practice for Cherry Becker. We are a top 30 CPA and advisory firm serving high-growth companies. It's our privilege to continue as a sponsor of TAG, the Summit, and the Top 40 Innovators program. And it's my personal privilege to have been involved with TAG and the Summit for over 10 years. So without further ado, I'm introducing our first speaker of the day, and we should get started quite well with this. Joe Plumeri was named Senior Advisor of KKR and the Board of Directors of KKR Portfolio Company First Data in August of 2013. In his previous role, Joe served as Chairman and CEO of Willis Group Holdings, an international insurance broker. Joe is a visionary whose leadership transformed a company nearly bankrupt when he joined in 2000 into a legendary success story. This transformation turned a company with an enterprise value of less than $2 billion to one with nearly $10 billion. Today, Willis Group Holdings boasts over 400 offices in 120 countries and approximately 17,000 employees. It is the world's third largest insurance broker when measured by revenues. Prior to joining Willis, Joe spent 32 years of his career as an executive of Citigroup. As CEO of Citibank North America, he championed the integration of the consumer businesses at Citicorp and Travelers Group. Joe's made several multi-million-dollar donations to his alma mater, the College of William & Mary, as well as to the Make-A-Wish Foundation. His contribution to William & Mary made possible the construction of Plumeri Park, a stadium now home to the university's baseball team. Joe also serves on the boards of the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse, Carnegie Hall, and the Churchill Center and Museum at the Cabinet Wardrooms in London. Without further ado, please join me in welcoming Mr. Joe Plumeri.
You mind if I take my jacket off? Get excited, for crying out loud. It's not meant to be sexy. So I'm supposed to talk about innovation, right? Is that what this is about? I learned about innovation when I was in college. I went to college in 1907, 08, something like that. I went to college at a place you heard called the College of William & Mary. Anybody ever hear the College of William & Mary? Yeah? Anybody graduate from there? I thought I was the only graduate. I went there in 1962. And I got there on a football scholarship, so you get a sense of how good this college. My coach, anybody a football fan here? Yeah, my coach, it was his first coaching job, was a guy with freckles who spit a lot, and his name was Lou Holz. And he said, look, and he recruited me, so you get an idea that there wasn't a lot of people to recruit to this place. Very old college. George Washington graduated from there, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Joey Plumeri. So he said, look, I show up and he says to me, we're going to do something different. We only won 3 games in the last 5 years, and I'm going to do something really innovative and really exciting at the college. So I'm going to put all the backs and room with the linemen. So I want to take you over, I want to introduce you to your roommate. So he takes me over to the dorm and he says, I want you to meet John Sapinski. John, this is Joe. I said, hello, John. He said, call me Ski. John was 6'5", 260 pounds, which in those days was big. And he had a crew cut and a ripple in the back of his head. You know those ripples those guys have? Right. So he said, listen, you guys got a room together. I want you to go to school together. I want you to be friends on and off the field, so that way we can take that spirit and that chemistry and we get to win some ball games. And the first thing I want you to do is I want you to go and register for Religion 101. Ski says, I'm not religious, Coach. He says, listen, I want you to go register for this class because they have not changed the question to the final exam in 20 years. So Ski, big guy, jumps. Excited. We go over. Now, today they do the registration line, right? But then we went over like to a big hall to register. It said Religion 101. It was a big sign, and there was a line out the door all the way to the quadrangle. Ski says, they must know the question. So I go in the back of the line, and to stand there, Ski says, follow me. So I follow him to the front. Nobody bothers us. He was blocking for me. So we register for Religion 101. We do not go to class the entire semester until 2 weeks before the final exam. Coach says, Ski says, we got to ask the coach for the question final exam. So I went up to the coach. I said, Coach, Ski wants to know the question to the final exam. He says, Ski, write this. Ski takes out one of those little pads. You know, ever seen one of those little pads? And he takes out a big pen. And I never saw him take either one out the whole semester. And he says, here's the question of the final exam. Discuss the life of St. Paul. So he writes it down. For 2 weeks, we're studying the Bible, the catechism. Remember the catechism? And he stops people to look religious. And he says, you know anything about St. Paul? I mean, we had this nailed. And we get to the final exam. Now, William and Mary was the first college ever to have honor system. And so there was no proctor ever in a room. So we go into this room that looked like an amphitheater. And so it goes up like this. And he sat in the front row, big guy in the front row. And I sat back here about 3 rows back. Proctor comes in, and he's got maybe 10 blue books. I said, Ski, what are you doing with all those blue books? He says, smart people have a lot of blue books. So I got a couple of blue books. I mean, I know enough about St. Paul. I'm ready to go. The proctor comes in, writes the question for the final exam. He says, criticize and analyze the Sermon on the Mount. Ski's in the front row. Got the ripple? Got it? And this is what he does. He looks up at me and does this. I am up here, I look down at him, and I do this. Anybody ever run out of gas? Do you know when you run out of gas, you never just stop the car and get out? You sit there for a couple of minutes waiting for divine intervention. You know what I'm talking about? Nobody ever just jumps out of the car. You kind of, come on, help me out here, right? So I do that. 15 minutes of divine intervention I'm waiting for. It doesn't happen. I write Joe Plumeri, and I walk down. So I walk down, Ski's on the left. He's writing, the man's writing ferociously. The information's coming down his arm, through his hand. I just don't know what he's writing. He knew nothing about the Sermon on the Mount. Nothing. As a matter of fact, I'm not sure he knew anything about a sermon at all. So I go back to the dorm. 3 hours later, Ski shows up. I said, Ski, what were you writing about? You don't know anything about the Sermon on the Mount. He says, we'll see. We'll see. About a week later, the tradition at the school is that blue books show up with your grade. I, of course, got an F. Ski gets a D-, the lowest possible passing grade. I couldn't believe the man passed. So I couldn't wait to see what he wrote. I opened the page and he writes, far be it from me, a mortal man, to criticize and analyze the words of the Lord. But let me take this opportunity to tell you a little bit about the life of St. Paul. Is that innovation or what? Huh? You got to improvise. There are things that you do. I've tried to be innovative all my life. Built companies. You can't build things unless you innovate. And there's a series of things that you need to do to be able to do that. And I think that it starts with a sense of vision. I don't think that innovation comes first and then you figure out the vision. I think what happens is that you have the vision and then it gives you the ability to be able to innovate so that you can accomplish what that vision is. And anybody in here a parent? You're a parent, raise your hand. I can't see with these. You're a lot of parents. Let me tell you something. Right now, you're all visionaries, which means that you're very innovative. Have you ever taken a road trip with your kids? Yes. Huh? Yes. Well, you understand what that's about, right? Have you ever taken like a long one? This could be torture. So what happens is invariably, now in my day, there was no TV in the back. There was just in the back seat, right? And my brothers and I would be in the back seat, and because it's a long trip, invariably we'd kind of mess around in the back. Now they're all strapped in watching something messing around. They can't get to each other, but they're trying. Invariably, you got to do something to settle them down. So what you do is you make up a great story about if they settle down, then you're going to get to this wonderful place that you're going to, but you got to settle down. And what my father always did was he said, we're going to Grandma's house. And Grandma's going to have cake and ice cream and all new toys. And it always gave us the ability to say, geez, we can't wait to get there, so maybe we should settle down. And it was a ploy that my father used to get us to think about where we're going rather than to do what we're doing. And he did that so we could endure the trip. And today, that kind of vision that I think about when I think about companies is the same thing. You got to have a vision inside of a company so that the people in the company or whatever you're doing, even if it's yourself, the vision is so vivid and it's so clear so that you could, what? Endure the trip. And if you have that vision that's so clear, and it is so exciting, and you're so enthused about where you're going, that you will do whatever it takes to be able to accomplish that vision. And we don't speak enough about the vision today because all of you in the technology sector have the opportunity to be able and must be able to facilitate that vision by being able to be innovative because you want to be able to accomplish that vision. That innovation, by the way, takes place first to be able to turn these companies. You heard about Willis. I'll tell you the story about Willis because it's a story about innovation. The Willis Group was the oldest insurance broker in the world. It's 200 years old, and it was located in London. And it was a company that was stodgy, and it was old, and it was very British, and it had never been run by anybody but a Brit. Now, you can imagine when I showed up, they thought Fonzie came to run this company. This is a company, by the way, that had a storied past. It insured the Titanic. It insured the Lusitania. The freaking place was a jinx. I left Citigroup. This is cool. You talk about innovation. This is cool. I leave Citigroup, and I don't know what I'm going to do. I was running Citibank. I don't know what I was going to do. I run into a guy who runs a company called KKR, big private equity on the streets of Paris. He said, what are you doing? I said, I don't know, look for my next adventure. He says, I just bought this company in London. I said, I said, Henry, I'm not, me, London, I don't think, they don't do this. He says, no, you got to go there and go see the chairman because we're going to fire him. I want you to meet him. I said, he's going to love me? So I go to the place, and it's an old building in London, and it's like really stodgy. It's one of those places where when you walk, you can hear the click of marble. And I said to the guard, I'd like to see John Reed. And he says, the chairman. And I said, man, what a place this is. They call the guy the chairman. Maybe his middle name is John. I don't know. So take me to see the chairman. He takes me, he says, I'm going to take you to the chairman's lift. The chairman's got a lift. I didn't know what a lift was. I thought it was the thing that you lift the boards and stuff. Takes me to the lift. It's very small. And I said to him, has anybody else used this lift, an elevator? And he says, no, just the chairman. So I'm getting an idea that this company is not dynamic. This company is not accessible. I get to the next floor, and he says, this is the chairman's floor. And I said, is anybody else on the floor? He says, nobody else is on the floor. And I said, this is it? He says, yeah, all the doors are closed. It's just his floor. Takes me in a waiting room. I wait 20 minutes. Finally, the guy shows up. He obviously is not excited that I'm there, but I really don't want the job. I don't want it. I don't want to do the London thing. And I don't know anything about insurance. So he walks in. It's a Monday morning. I spent the weekend in London. Most of you would say to me, how was your weekend? How you doing? Did you enjoy the sights? Whatever the case may be. He says to me, I do not think KKR should hire you. I said, now I'm sitting back, uninterested. Like that kind of sit back like you don't care, right? And then when he says they shouldn't hire you, I sat up. I said, why not? He says, because you don't know anything about insurance. He says, this company's never had anything but a British chairman, and you don't have any international experience. Now I am sitting straight up, and he has my attention. I didn't want the freaking job when I got there. So I said to him, figuring that I would try to extract some degree of comedy out of the guy, I says, it's not true that I do not have international experience. He said, I don't see where you have international experience. I said, I do. I have relatives living in Sicily. The guy, excuse my language, but I'm Italian from New Jersey, pissed me off. I leave the meeting. I had no intention whatsoever of taking that job. I called Henry Kravis. I said, I'm going to take the next plane home. We'll talk about doing this job. He says, what changed your mind? He said, I said, the reason I changed my mind is because the guy, number one, told me that an American had never run the company. That got to me. That really got to me. He said, I didn't know anything about anything. That got to me. And I said to myself, this is a good chance to really show what I can do and how innovative I could be in taking some of the techniques of the things that I've done in America and take them over to London and show how innovative we could be. I never forgot, so I take the job and we have a meeting of a room this size of all the top executives of this company. And he's sitting behind the desk introducing me. He reads his final speech, which is unexciting, unenergetic, and boring. Doesn't look up once. Then he says to me, and I'm sitting next to him at the desk. I've never sat next to somebody while I was giving a speech. So he says to the audience, and now I want to introduce the new chairman and CEO, Willis. He said he has no insurance experience. He has no international experience. and he's going to need a lot of help. Here's the new chairman and CEO, Joe Plumeri. I take my jacket off, as I just did. I walk from behind the desk, and I go into the office. The Brits thought they were under attack and that I was Fonzie. So I say to them, look, one day, this company, now understand it's a private company. KKR had taken the company private. They hadn't made money in 12 years. Their revenue hadn't grown an inch. There was no sense of innovation, no sense of technology, no sense of the future. And I told them, I said that this insurance broker will now be the most innovative in the world. We will use technology to be able to replace that which we do in processes so that we could be faster, we could be quicker, the prices could be better. I said, and everything we do is going to change and transform us so that we become one of the great insurance brokers of the world. And one day, the stock will be $30, $40, $50 a share. And I'm jumping up and down as I'm doing it, and they think I'm nuts. There was no stock. I didn't care. I wanted them to get excited about this vision that I had for the future, so that in the excitement of that vision of a company that would make them proud, a company that would finally be able to recognize who these people were, to do that, they had to do things to endure the trip. We changed the technology of the company. Instead of people walking across the street with big billing slips under their arm so that they could place business at Lloyd's, we changed the technology so that we could route everything technologically. We had people who worked together in different forms of the way we did it. Did you guys ever see the movie Captain Phillips? Yes. About Maersk? We won that account from Marsh. They had that account for 30 years. Because through technology and because through innovation, I had all of the aspects of Willis lined up against the backdrop of what Maersk needed, so that when they saw us and they saw that we could work together against their needs, against the backdrop of asking them questions of how we can make them better, we won that account because we became the most innovative insurance broker in the world. Because there was a vision, that vision had to be supported by innovation. So when you talk about innovation in the next several hours, understand that there's got to be something behind that. That story took place in 2000. The Willis story is an interesting one, because today the stock it was $3 a share privately, and it's $45 a share today. The people who owned the stock that day, but it was private, remember that day like it was yesterday and say, Joe, I remember that ridiculous speech you gave when you went crazy. And they send me pictures of their vacation home. And they say, thank you for that speech, thank you for that innovation, thank you for pushing us, so that you need to have innovation has to come first with the vision, so that the people could understand that whatever they do innovatively, and it's difficult a lot of times to do it, there's a grander vision to endure the trip. After the innovation, after the vision comes the passion. You can't have passion first and then vision. The vision must drive the passion. Anybody here a baseball fan? Baseball fan? You're probably all Braves fans, right? That's all right. No, I'm sure. My father was 80 years old. 21 years ago. And he just had a quintuple bypass. And I said to him, Pop, you got to relax. You're 80 years old, man. You got to kind of cool it. I'll get you a house. And he says, I don't want to cool it. Now, I'm from Trenton, New Jersey. Trenton, New Jersey is one of those northeast cities that have kind of seen its day, and everybody's moving out, and there's a lot of gangs and all that kind of stuff, and it's bad. But he was so prideful of his city and where he came from, that he wanted to do something to rejuvenate it. And I said, well, what do you want to do, Pop? You're 80 years old. What do you want to do? He says, well, I think we ought to have a baseball team come to Trent. And I said, Pop, you're crazy. You can't baseball team. Nobody cares about that. And he says, I see this land along the river that's a garbage dump, that one day we can put a baseball field there, we can have a mall there, we can have shops, we can have restaurants, and we can have a marina where everybody can come and feel a lot of pride to come back in the city. I'm trying to talk him out of it, but his vision is so clear that he will do anything innovatively, as off the wall as he possibly could, to be able to get this done. So I say to him, thinking it can't be done, he's 80 years old, and who cares about that? And baseball, I said, look, if you can get a stadium built, knowing full well the city doesn't have housing, city doesn't have anything, I said, if you can do that, then I'll buy the baseball team. Not knowing what I'm talking about, but I'm just trying to, you know. So 4 months go by, and my brother calls me, maybe 5 months. My brother's the sheriff of the county in which we operated. Trenton was in Mercer County. And my brother says to me, I think he did it. I said, what did he do? He said he got the city council to approve a referendum to build a stadium for $16.5 million. Now, $16.5 million 21 years ago is a lot of money in a city that lacks housing, lacks good roads, they got school problems, they got all of this stuff, but an 80-year-old man, I said, what did he do? He said, well, he stood on the street corners and gave out pamphlets. And he talked about how wonderful it would be if people started streaming back into the city instead of leaving the city. And that wouldn't it be great if city became rejuvenated, reborn, and reinvented by virtue of this baseball stadium and this team. And he said he went on TV almost every day with the compassion and the passion that he showed because of this vision that he had. Notice I haven't had dream. Dreams are very nice when you sleep, but nothing happens when you sleep. You got to have a vision that is clear, that motivates you to be able to have that passion that you exude to make things happen. And then I said, and he says, and then not only the TV, but he was on the newspaper. He had articles in the newspaper every day. The man went all over the place so that people got so excited, first over him and an 80-year-old man being so excited about his vision that the man would do anything. You talk about innovation, he did anything. He was shameless because the vision was so much bigger than whatever he thought he was himself. I said, Pop, that's great. I heard that Butch, my brother, said that you got the stadium. Geez, that's great. What he did to get it is he got 1,500 people in a candlelight parade in the middle of Trenton going to City Hall so that all the councilmen could see these people wanted this stadium. 1,500 people. You got to be really innovative to do that. They passed a referendum. He says, now will you get me the ball? Now will you get me the team? So I'm still worried about his heart. And I said, Pop, you know, I'd love to do it, but I'm still worried about your heart. You don't have a team. He says, if I get a team, will you get me the ball? Would you do it? I said, yes, I'll do it. I get a call weeks later from the owner of the New York Yankees, whose name is George Steinbrenner. He's a friend of mine. And my assistant says, George Steinbrenner's on the phone. He never calls me, never. I pick up the phone, I said, George, to what do I owe this pleasure? He said, are you related to Sam Plumeri? I said, yes, I am. He said, tell him to stop harassing me. I said, what's he doing? He says he calls me every day and he wants to know if I have a team. I told him I got the Yankees. He says, no, I want a minor league team. The way it works is you don't call an owner and you get a team. You got to get a franchise from Major League Baseball to be able to do that. And then after you get the franchise, then they give you a minor league affiliation with a major league team. That's the way it works. So after I heard that, and you talk about a guy who did everything he possibly could, innovation takes lots of different forms. But this guy did everything he possibly could to make the vision that was so clear that passion shone every day. And when you talk about technology, it's nice because it's the roadway and the gateway to the future and a lot of things. But if you don't have innovation that comes from not only the technology that breeds it, but the heart that drives it, it doesn't work. So I say no, even though he's done everything I asked him to do. And I tell you this because it's important that you couple the innovation and the technology with the heart at the same time. I don't do anything. He goes out and raises the money himself, but it's all debt. All debt. He runs the team by himself for a year, and they become affiliated with the Detroit Tigers. At the end of a year, it's very successful, but a lot of people in the league are resentful of this old man who went out and got the debt himself, which is a story by itself. But the league rules said you have to have enough equity against the debt to be able to continue owning the team. The season's over. There's a meeting in Trenton, and he calls me. He's now 81, 82, because it took a couple of years to do this. And he said, I need you to come to Trenton. In a frail 82-year-old voice. I said, Pop, what's the matter? He says, you got to come to Trenton. I go into a room with 3 people in the front of the room clearly wanting to snatch my father's vision for the city away. The city's already been built. The garbage has been removed, and you could see the remnants of the vision taking place. And the meeting began by saying, if you don't have enough equity against the debt that you have, we're going to take the franchise away from you. I could see my father starting to tear up. And I said to myself, why did it take you so long for your heart to kick in? You saw how creative and innovative this man got so that his vision could come true and his passion shone through. Then what were you doing and what were you looking for and where was your head? But more important, Joe, where was your heart? So when I saw that, I looked at the front of the room and I said to these guys, your equity is covered, I'll take care of it. So I put the money in. My father never looked so good in his life. He felt a sense of pride, not because he now had his team secured, but because his son was on his side. And I hadn't recognized that. And in our life, innovation and technology and all that stuff is good, but we can't remember or forget the things that got us to where we are, and that's because we allowed our heart to shine through. The rest of the story is a wonderful one. In the last 20 years, Trenton has been the minor league team of the year, 5 of those 20 years in the United States. It has pumped in over $20 million a year of revenue to Trenton. They built an arena in Trenton that houses a professional hockey team, a professional basketball team. The whole waterfront is a marina and shops where people come in from out of town. And there's this beautiful stadium with a statue outside the stadium because of a dream, but more importantly, a vision that a man had. And he did anything he possibly could innovatively to be able to do that. So when you think about what we're doing. And by the way, that team today, all because of that vision, we went from Detroit. His dream was to always have the New York Yankees to be affiliated because he grew up with DiMaggio and Berra and Rizzuto and all those guys. I did too because they were short, and And I said, the thing I'm going to do is eventually become affiliated with the Yankees. And about 10 years ago, after he had died, I signed a contract with the New York Yankees, and now Trenton is the AA affiliate of the New York Yankees. And I remember last year when Derek Jeter was on rehab and he played, in our ballpark, I couldn't help but remember and think about this wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for an 80-year-old man who had a vision, who did everything he possibly could. He went beyond innovation to make this happen. So it starts with a vision. That gets you the passion. The passion gives you the ability to endure anything you have to do innovatively to make sure that that happens. And every time I think of that story, and every time I think about an obstacle that I have and I have to overcome, what I think about is my father and what my father would say to me. And he would say to me, you could do that. You could figure out how to do that, Joe. This year will be the 21st year in the stadium. We've had over 5 million people attend that ballpark, and it's been one of the most greatest experiences of my life because I figured out that it wasn't the baseball business. It was a business of making people feel good. I told the staff, don't ever worry about the score. I can't control the score. You can control how you make people feel. And if you make people feel good, then that's all that counts. And that's why that stadium is packed every day, and that's the reason why people come there. In 20 years, nobody's ever told me to score. They've just said to me, Joe, I went to your ballpark, and you made me feel good. I had a great time with my kids. I've done more innovative things with that thing. I had a dog that actually attacked an umpire, and I got thrown out of the game. Innovation. I'm trying to do things that are exciting and innovative so that people could come to the ballpark. My father said to me, Joe, I got a dog who catches fly balls. I said, what do you mean he catches fly balls? He says, you got to come and see the dog. Had a hat, a glove, a uniform on. And I said, he's going to break his jaw. He said, he gets it from the side like a Frisbee. And he's catching the balls, and everybody in the stands are going crazy. And I said, what else does this dog do? He says, well, he's a bat boy. He gets the bats. And he does. I said, what else does he do? He says, well, he gets the lineup card, takes it to home plate, and gives it to the umpire. What else does he do? He says, well, you tell me what do you want me to do about the seventh inning umpire called the bad play at second base. And I said, that umpire, the dog should go on the umpire. And I said, so I said it. And he does this to the dog, and the dog runs out, chases the umpire, does like this, and the umpire chases him all around the ballpark. He looks at me in the box and throws me out of the game. The first time in the history of the Eastern League, the owner's been thrown out of the game. He threw the dog out of the game. A dog has never been thrown out of the game. He threw everybody he could out of the game. I was on ESPN the next day. Talk about innovation. I couldn't have enough seats the rest of the season for everybody to see that dog. I bought the dog. With innovation, you have to believe that anything's possible. You can't innovate. It starts with the vision. You go to passion, and then there's got to be an inner belief that anything is possible. Because innovation comes with a teammate, and that teammate's got to be a belief that you can do anything, and if you innovate, you can get there. In 2008, I bought this company at the worst possible time. Remember, 2008 was not the greatest time ever. I buy a company for $2.1 billion in June. I have no idea that the following fall, the world's going to fall apart. This company has 6 offices in Chicago. I got 2, now I got 8. And obviously what I need to do is to integrate them. The deal gets closed in November, and my financing falls apart because the credit markets, for those of you in the finance business, the windows were closed. So I had to go out and borrow money at 13% interest to close the deal, because that's when the sharks come around, when there's no other place to go. So I get the deal done, and now I got to integrate. And that's the way you actually do deals. You integrate so you save money and you build a culture. So I got all these offices in Chicago, and I said, I got to find a place for these offices. You talk about innovation. And I said to my real estate guy, where can we put all of these people? Because I wanted to move them all from around the Chicago area, right downtown Chicago. Unemployment in Chicago in 2009 in February was in excess of 12%. So he gives me a list of all the buildings, and one of them was the Sears Tower. And I said, that's got to be an interesting choice. I said, because I think that probably the vacancy rate is big, because everybody believes that's the next building to be attacked. The World Trade Center and then the Sears Tower. And every time the lease was up, people would move out because they would be fearful that that would be the next point of attack. And I'm saying to myself, geez, I can really be creative and innovative here and maybe get something done. So I said to the real estate guy, I said, let me talk to the owner of the Sears Tower. I go see the guy and I said, look, I just need about, 300,000 square feet. By the way, that's about 3, 4, 5% of the entire building. I need to rent it. I said, I'll rent it for a long period of time, but I don't want to really pay too much. Now, the guy is hurting. I know that. It's February of '09. I know that. I know that 20% of the building is not occupied. I know that. So I got an opportunity here to be really innovative. I got an opportunity to be able to take the worst possible time in history, maybe, arguably, and turn it into something really great if I'm innovative. So he says to me, what do you want to pay? He says the average rent in the building is $35. He said, for you, anytime anybody says for you, $30. I said, I don't think I was interested in that. He says, well, tell me what it is you want. Tell me what you want. Tell me what it is that you want to have. And I said, I'm not going to tell you. I don't want to insult you. He said, no, go ahead. It's all right. I'm not going to be insulted. So I said, you sure? He said, go ahead. I'm not going to be insulted. I said, $10. He said, you insulted me. I said, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. So I got up to leave. As I get up to leave, I walk about 5 feet, and he's down to $20. So I said to myself, this is good. I keep walking every 5 feet. It's $10. Finally, we agree on $14.50 a square foot. And this is Chicago in the Sears Tower. Now, you all know, if you know the real estate business, $14.50 a square foot, that's pretty cheap, right? Anybody cheaper than that? That's pretty good. So he says, look, you made a great deal. Congratulations, so we have a deal. I said, nah, not exactly. He says, what do you want? I said, the problem with this building is it's a jinx. He said, what do you mean? I said, people with the Sears name, Sears Tower, they all think it's the next terrorist attack. You got to change the name to a dynamic name, a name that everybody will see up there that will change the image of Chicago and the skyline. I said, well, what name is that? I said, Willis. Nobody knew who the hell Willis was. They thought Willis was that little kid on television. What's up, Willis? I wanted that to be up. So I'm as innovative as I possibly can be. I said, you changed the name, I guarantee you that the whole idea of this town and the building will change and the jinx will go away. He says, I don't know if I can do that. I said, you own the building, you can do that. Comes back the next day and he says to me, I can do that. He says, but I got to charge you. I can't give it to you for free. Now, understand, up until then, he said white, I said blue. He said gray, I said pink. We never agreed on anything. And I say to him, I understand that. I'll do that. How much do you want? He's amazed at the fact that I have now said yes to him. He said, I got to charge you $1 million a year for the life of the lease. I said, no problem. He said, do we have a deal? I said, not exactly. He said, what do you want now? I said, look, you are not my client, and all you need to do is become my client. I get the revenue from you being a client, and all you got to do is give me enough in revenue to offset what I pay you. What I pay you every year, and we have a deal, and I want you to put it in a lease so that if you pay me less, I pay you less. So if you pay me $900, I pay you $900. He says, if I do that, do we have a deal? I said, yes, we have a deal. In July of 2009, we dedicate the building. And there's a beautiful choir, and it's Willis sign goes up. And I remember very vividly that everybody in Chicago uniformly got mad at me. If you mention my name in Chicago, duck. Innovation is wonderful. Creativity is wonderful. Passion is wonderful. I had a vision of that building being named Willis. I was passionate about it, and I wanted to make sure that I did everything I possibly could innovatively to make that happen. So I didn't know that everybody would get upset with me. I brought jobs into the city. Sears hadn't been there since 1993, and they were mad at me. So I go on television, and I go on radio and all that stuff. They don't know. They think I'm British. So because it's a British company taking over, American company, all this kind of stuff, the routine. So I go on a radio show. I said, put me on the most popular radio show so I can tell these people, okay, this is a good thing. So I go on this radio show, frickin' frack and all that stuff. And but usually producers come on if you do radio and they talk to you for a minute and then they say you'll be on in 30 seconds or whatever. Nobody did that. They put me right on. So these guys think I'm British. And they said, ladies and gentlemen, we have the most controversial person that's ever appeared on our show, the chairman and chief executive officer of the Willis Group, who's changed the name of our beloved tower to a British name. Joe Plumeri, Mr. Plumeri. No, they called me Joseph. My mother called me that when she was really upset with me. Joseph Plumeri, directly from London. They thought I was in London. I was not in London. I was in my house in New Jersey. So they said, thank you very much for being with us, especially at this late hour in London. I said, how you doing? The guy said, you don't sound British. I said, I'm not British. And I'm not in London. I'm in New Jersey. And we have more people in North America and Chicago than any place else in the world. So why are you upset? We're bringing all these jobs into the city. Sears hadn't been here all these years. They took the jobs outside the city. What's your problem? For an hour, we do the questions and answers. People are dialing in, or they're going, Finally, the last guy at the end of the show says to me, He says, you sound like a feisty guy. You belong in Chicago. I think you ought to stay here. And I'm saying, where the hell am I going to go? I got this big building. I'm not going to go anyplace. That night of the dedication, Brian Williams asks me, he said, all these years that this building's been up there, and it's been called Sears, how did you come along and change the name to Willis? Why you? What did you do? This is the essence of innovation. I said, I asked. So you see, what I'm telling you is it starts with a profound vision that's so clear that gives you the ability to be able to take your craft, in this case technology, so that you can facilitate that vision taking place because it's so profound and it's so clear and so important in your mind and your vision of where you want to be and where you want to go, either as an individual, either your family, or your business. It doesn't matter. It's very important. It starts with that vision. Innovation is a facilitator of all of that. The passion comes with how crisp that vision is and how much you believe it. The story of my father is the most profound one I can give you. The ability to be able to feel it and to have the ability to take advantage of circumstances. You're not going to innovate anything unless you ask questions about whether or not this can happen or that can happen, and then finally have the courage to be able to implement it. You heard that I'm on the board of the Churchill Museum and War Rooms in London. Anybody been there? You know, down in the thing, right? So I'm on a board. I'm the only American. They're all sirs and dukes. I'm Joey. You see, you got to believe anything's possible. Like the story about the tower, you can't innovate if you don't think anything's possible. You can't. You just can't do it. You got to ask, because you think anything's possible. See, most people don't ask because they don't think it's possible. I had a vision that I wanted to be in a war room because I thought Churchill was great. Man, it would have been greater if he was Italian. It would be unbelievable. I had that vision that I wanted to be there. The first time I ever sat in a war room was in his chair. And like the indentation was unbelievable. I had that vision, and I got myself in that war room. You know how I got in a war room? I got in a war room board by saying to the guy who ran it, the chairman, you need insurance for that war room and museum, and I will, whoever has your insurance now, whatever that is, I'll get it for you cheaper. He says, you don't know what it is. I said, I don't care, I'll get it cheaper. Because I wanted to be where Churchill was. I had a vision about being where Churchill was. And if there was ever courage, that man showed courage. All the things I've talked about with innovation are all great. But the pillar and the foundation of making all those things happen is courage. At the end of the war, after all the things the guy did, you know what he did. I mean, you saw the movies and you read the books and all that stuff. You know, fight him in the beaches, fight him in the air, never give up. All that stuff. Single-handedly, anybody would agree he kept the spirit of the British people alive during World War II. At the end of World War II, he runs for re-election and he gets beat. He makes a concession speech June 19th, 1945. And he says, my fellow Brits, success is never final. Failure is never fatal. All that's important is courage. When you're up there and everything is going great, it's not final. You got to keep banging away and banging away. If you find that you have been innovative and you have the courage to be innovative because you have the vision, the passion, the ability to be able to think anything is possible, it's the courage that you need even when that innovation wins. And even though you're doing well, you can't stop innovating. You can't stop asking all the questions that you need to ask. Success is never final. You got to have the courage to keep going. Failure's not fatal. It's not fatal because when you're down there, that doesn't mean it's over. You got to have the courage to keep coming back. So when you try the innovation and you have all those things in place and the innovation is not working, it's not in sync with the vision and the passion and believing that anything is possible, sometimes it's not going to work the first time. Didn't work for my father the first time. Didn't work for a lot of people the first time. But you got to believe that failure is not fatal. You got to have courage. So when you walk out of here and the discussions that you have, remember innovation comes from the heart. It comes from your courage. It comes from your passion. It comes from your vision. And it comes from a sincere belief that anything is possible. If we believe as a people, if we believe as a country, all of those tenets, that the use of technology that facilitates our future and drives all the innovation, along with our heart and our passion, there is nothing that this country can't do. Because we have not seen our finest days as long as we remember that if we couple our heart, we couple the technology together with the innovation and the passion to have the vision to make our place greater, we're going to be able to do that. It's been a pleasure to talk to you. It's been a pleasure to start your day. Thank you very much, everybody. God bless you.
Thank you very much. Great. It was really great. We have a gift. Thank you. We have a small gift. Appreciate it very much.